Marcus Hale was 38 years old when his wife of 11 years looked him in the eyes, called him worthless, and walked out the front door of the home he had built with his own hands. For a decade and a half, Marcus had done everything quietly and completely. He had spent 9 years growing a boutique construction and renovation firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, from 2 employees and a borrowed truck to a company of 19 people that handled commercial contracts across 3 counties. He drove a 2016 Ram 1500 with a cracked dashboard and 140,000 miles on it. He wore Carhartt on job sites and a clean-collared shirt to client meetings and never once confused the two. He was home by 6 when he could be, and when he couldn't, he called. He never missed a school pickup. He never missed a parent-teacher conference. He had saved $340,000 in a business reserve account, paid down 60% of the mortgage on the house he had renovated himself, and quietly, over the previous 4 years, had been building something else. Something Renee had never asked about, and never thought to. What she said when she left was, "You peaked at foreman. Marcus, men like you don't become anything more." What she didn't know was that the 40% stake he held in Colton Hale Development Group, a private real estate development company he had co-founded with his college roommate, Derek Colton, and had never once mentioned to her, was valued at $4.2 million at the time she said it. What happened in the year that followed would cost Renee the settlement she had already spent in her head, the man she had traded Marcus for, and every single thing she thought she understood about who she had left. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The alarm went off at 5:11 a.m. On the Tuesday it started, the same time it always did. Marcus lay still for exactly 1 breath. Then he got up. He went to the bathroom, filled a glass of water from the tap, drank half of it, and set the glass on the edge of the sink the way he always did. He dressed in the dark work jeans, a gray long-sleeve thermal, heavy socks. He laced his boots at the foot of the bed. Renee did not move. She was on her side, facing away, the comforter pulled to her chin. She had been sleeping that way for 6 months, facing the wall. Marcus noticed these things the way he noticed everything on job sites, not dramatically, not with commentary, just carefully, the way a man does when he has trained himself to see exactly what is in front of him. He went downstairs, made coffee in the old Cuisinart with the loose carafe handle, poured it into the thermos he'd had for 4 years, stainless, matte black, scuffed along one side from a fall off a scaffolding shelf, and went out through the side door to the driveway. The Ram was cold. He let it run for 2 minutes before pulling out. The house was in Arboretum, a quiet neighborhood on the southeast side of Charlotte, with big oaks and sidewalks and neighbors who waved from their driveways. Marcus had bought the lot at a foreclosure auction 8 years ago and spent 3 months building the house himself on nights and weekends. Framed it, drywalled it, tiled it, finished the hardwood floors on his knees with a palm sander while Renee was in grad school 2 states away. He'd sent her photos as it came together. She had liked a few of them. When she came back and saw the finished house, she said, "It's smaller than I imagined," and Marcus had nodded and said, "It'll do." It had 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a back deck he'd added the summer before with composite decking, and a pergola he'd built from cedar. He drove to the Westover job site by 5:45 a.m. It was a commercial renovation, a 6-unit mixed-use building on Commonwealth Avenue that his company had been contracted to gut and rebuild to the studs. The project manager, a man named Terrence, who had been with Marcus for 6 years, was already there, standing in the cold with a site plan rolled under his arm and a coffee from the gas station down the block. "Cold front coming," Terrence said. I know, Marcus said. Make sure Diaz gets the concrete poured before noon. It'll set wrong if it gets below 38 after. Already on him. Marcus walked the east side of the structure first, the way he always did, from the foundation to the roofline, looking at the work the way he looked at everything, not for what was right, but for what was off. He found a section of rough framing on the third floor where someone had toe-nailed a stud at the wrong angle. He pulled it, re-nailed it himself, said nothing. This was how he had always done it. He did not explain the correction to the crew, and he did not document it for credit. He simply fixed it. That was how he'd been from the beginning, building without commentary, correcting without theater, moving forward without pausing to be observed doing it. 9 years. That was how long he had been running Hale Construction. He had started it with $18,000 in savings and a second-hand flatbed that burned a quart of oil every 6 weeks. He had done every job himself in the first 2 years. The estimates, the permits, the site work, the invoicing. He had hired his first employee, a framer named Julio Mendez, in year 3. He had moved into commercial work in year 5, after a project manager at a local developer saw him rebuild a loading dock on a warehouse job and called him directly. He had 19 employees now and turned down more work than he took, because he had decided early that every project with his name on it would be done right or not at all. He did not explain this to people. It was simply the way he worked. At 7:30, he was back in his truck reviewing bids. The cab smelled like coffee and sawdust. His worn leather folio, the one he had used since the second year of the company, edges softened now and dark from handling, lay open on the passenger seat with 3 bid documents and a set of handwritten notes. At 8:15, he was on a call with Derek Colton, his business partner, about a plot of land in Noda, the North Davidson Arts District, that they were considering for their next development project. The seller won't budge on 2.1, Derek said. But the zoning's clean, and the comps in that corridor are running strong. Give me until Thursday, Marcus said. I want to walk the site once more. Derek was quiet for a moment. You good, man? You sound tired. I'm fine, Marcus said. Thursday, he drove home that evening at 6:02, parked in the driveway, and sat in the truck for a minute with the engine off, watching the front windows of the house. The lights were on in the kitchen. He could see the amber glow of the countertop fixture through the blinds. He did not know why he sat there as long as he did. He got out. Renee was at the kitchen island with a glass of wine and her laptop. She looked up when he came in and said, "There's leftover pasta in the refrigerator," and looked back down. She was 36 years old, marketing director at a regional healthcare company, and for the last year and a half she had spoken to him mostly in logistics. Dinner location. Utility bills. When the cleaner was coming, he made himself a plate, stood at the counter, and ate it. "How was your day?" he asked. "Long," she said. That was all. He washed his plate, set it in the drying rack, and went upstairs. He sat at the desk in the small home office at the end of the hall, the one she called the messy room because of the shelf of project binders and the rolled site plans stacked in the corner, and opened his laptop. He spent an hour reviewing the Noda site projections. The numbers held. The opportunity was real. He had known it since the first time he had walked the block, which was 6 months ago. And nothing he had seen since had changed his assessment. He closed the laptop. He turned off the light. He stood in the hallway for a moment, outside the door of the room they had made into a spare bedroom when they had talked. Briefly, 5 years ago, about having kids. The conversation had not continued. He did not think about it often. He moved on down the hall. He washed up and got into bed. He lay on his back, looking at the ceiling. Renee came to bed 90 minutes later. She lay on her side, facing the wall. He listened to her breathing slow. Then he closed his eyes and went to sleep. It was the new cologne that Marcus noticed first. He was a man who noticed small things, and the cologne was not a small thing. It was a men's fragrance, woody and sharp, and it did not belong in their bathroom. He found it on her side of the vanity on a Thursday evening, tucked behind the hand lotion, and he stood looking at it for a moment, before stepping back into the hallway. He almost kept moving. He almost told himself it was a gift, a sample, something she'd picked up at the store. Instead, he sat down on the edge of the bed and stayed very still. Over the next 2 days, he noticed other things. The way she angled her phone away from him when a message came through. A charge on the joint account to a restaurant downtown. A nice one, the kind they only went to for anniversaries, on a Wednesday afternoon when she'd told him she had a working lunch. A silver bracelet he had never seen on her wrist, new and clearly recent, that she slipped off and put in her purse before they went to bed. He did not confront her. He did not check her phone. He was not by nature a man who searched for confirmation of things he already knew. On the following Saturday, Renee left the house at 11 a.m. She said she was going to brunch with her friend Cassandra from work. She took 45 minutes to get ready, more than usual. She wore a dress Marcus had not seen before. He drove to the Westover site and worked alone until late afternoon, pulling measurements, reworking the third-floor layout in his notebook. At 3:47 p.m., he drove back through the Dilworth neighborhood on his way home and stopped at the light on East Bluffed. From across the intersection, through the window of a restaurant called Kindred, he saw Renee. She was not with Cassandra. She was with a man, late 30s, broad, square-jawed, wearing a blazer over a fitted black shirt. He was leaning toward her across the small table. She was laughing. Her hand was on the table between them, and his hand was on top of it. Marcus sat at that light through a full cycle before the car behind him honked. He drove home. He parked. He sat in the truck with the engine off for 11 seconds. Then he got out, went inside, and made a cup of coffee, black, and sat at the kitchen table with his notebook open. He did not call Renee. He did not call Derek. He sat at the table for 40 minutes and did not move. Then he opened his laptop and began writing down everything he had seen and remembered over the last 30 days. Dates, times, specific charges, the restaurant name, the cologne, the bracelet. He organized it in a document. He gave it a file name and put it in a folder. He printed one copy and put it in the back of a project binder on the shelf in the home office. Then he closed the laptop, washed his coffee cup, and sat on the back deck in the cold until the sun went down. When Renee came home at 5:30, she found him there. "How was brunch?" he asked. "Good," she said, low-key. He nodded. "Cassandra says hi," Renee added. He nodded again. She went inside. Marcus stayed on the deck until it was dark, listening to the neighborhood settle into evening. A dog somewhere, a car passing slow, the distant sound of someone's music. He went inside. He made dinner. He did not speak, and neither did she. He slept through the night without waking. Marcus called his oldest friend, Jalen Shaw, on a Sunday morning. Jalen had known Marcus since they were 12 years old growing up in Gastonia. He was now a general contractor in Atlanta, married with 3 kids, and the kind of man who answered the phone on the first ring. "Talk to me," Jalen said, which was the way he always answered when he could tell from the call alone that something was wrong. Marcus told him everything: the cologne, the restaurant, the bracelet. The way Renee had said Cassandra says hi without blinking. He told it without inflection, the way he told Terrence what the day's priorities were, in order, specific, nothing wasted. When he finished, Jalen was quiet for a long moment. "Tell me you're not just going to sit on this," Jalen said. "I'm not sitting on it," Marcus said. "I'm handling it." Marcus. Legally, Jalen. Completely, another silence. Then, "You need an attorney. Already looking. Good. And you need to talk to Derek." Marcus paused. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because when I talk to Derek, it changes what this is," Marcus said. "Right now, it's a marriage problem. I want to make sure I understand all of it before it becomes a legal problem." Jalen exhaled. "What can I do?" "Just be on the phone when I need you to be." "Always," Jalen said. "You know that." Marcus thanked him, hung up, and drove to the Westover site alone. He spent 4 hours there. He worked until his hands ached, and his back was sore, and the light had shifted. He did not think about Renee while he was working. He thought about the framing. He thought about the load calculations. He thought about the notice site and whether the soil report was clean. He marked 3 problems with orange chalk and left notes for Terrence. He walked the length of the structure 3 times. When he reached the north end the second time through, he stood for a moment, looking at the completed foundation work. Solid, level, built to outlast everyone who had ever set foot on it. And then, he walked back. On the way home, he stopped at the office of a family law attorney named Claudia Reeves, whose name had come from a referral from a client 3 years before. He had never thought to call before. He sat in the parking lot and looked at the building for a moment. Then he went in and made an appointment for the following Wednesday. He also, over the next 10 days, did 3 other things. He called Derek and told him he needed to understand the Colton Hale documentation fully, not because of any crisis, he said, but because his own business affairs were becoming more complex and he wanted everything buttoned down. Derek sent the founding documents, the operating agreement, and the capitalization records by email that same afternoon. Marcus reviewed them carefully, printed them, and added them to the binder in the home office. He opened a personal checking account in his name, only at a bank where he did not have a joint account with Renee. He transferred 3 months of his own income into it, because Claudia Reeves's office had told him, when he called to make the appointment, to secure independent funds without closing or altering any marital accounts. And he hired a private investigator. Not to dig into Renee, not to gather evidence of the affair for the divorce itself. North Carolina was a no-fault state, and infidelity would not change the equitable distribution. He hired the investigator to verify one specific thing, whether Gavin Farrell had any financial connections to assets or individuals that might affect how the divorce proceedings unfolded. He wanted to know exactly who was in the room before he walked into it. The investigator's name was Danny Osai, no relation to the forensic accountant Claudia would hire later, and he came back in 8 days with a clean report. Gavin Farrell was a regional VP at a commercial real estate firm headquartered in Raleigh. Net worth in the mid-6 figures. No prior marriages. No significant debt. No connections to anyone in Marcus's professional orbit. That was all Marcus needed to know. He filed the report with the other documents in the binder. He went to work. Meanwhile, and Marcus would learn this later, from the forensic accountant's timeline, Renee and Gavin were not being quiet. Gavin was taking her to restaurants that appeared on their joint credit card statement. She was making purchases, a weekend at the Grove Park Inn in Asheville, a leather bag that cost $1,400, a weekend flight to New York she had told Marcus was a marketing conference, on an account Marcus had not known she had opened in her own name 3 months prior. She had taken $6,200 from their joint savings in 2 withdrawals to fund the new account. each withdrawal spaced 32 days apart, each just below the amount that would have triggered a notification on Marcus's banking app. Deliberate, incremental, carefully timed. He had not noticed. He had been waking at 5 in the morning and driving to job sites and reviewing bids and walking load-bearing structures looking for the problem that others had missed. He had been present, completely in the work, the way he had always been. She had counted on that. What she had not counted on was that the man who sees everything on a job site eventually sees everything else too. Claudia Reeves was a small woman in her 50s with short silver hair and a deliberate manner. Her office walls held degrees from Davidson College and Wake Forest Law, framed neatly, and a shelf of legal texts along one wall. She shook Marcus's hand and told him to have a seat. He laid out what he had, the document he'd printed, the dates and charges, what he had observed at the restaurant. He told her about the joint account, the new possessions, the changes in Renee's behavior over the previous year. He told her about the $6,200 in withdrawals from joint savings that he had identified once his attention turned in that direction. He was specific. He was organized. He did not editorialize. He did not lead with the business. He waited until she had reviewed the initial document. Before we go further, Marcus said, "There's something else you should know about my financial picture that I haven't discussed with my wife." He told her about Colton Hale. He told her about the stake. He told her the current valuation. Claudia set her pen down and looked at him. "When was this established?" she asked. 7 years ago, he said. Before the marriage was in any difficulty. The company has been operating and growing since then. All documentation is in my business name. The capitalization came entirely from premarital savings, $130,000 I had accumulated between the ages of 22 and 30, which is documented in my personal financial records from before the marriage. She looked at him for another moment. "Is your wife aware of this entity?" "No," Marcus said. She never asked. Claudia was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then she picked up her pen. "Mr. Hale," she said, "North Carolina is an equitable distribution state, which means marital assets are divided based on what's fair, not automatically 50-50. Whether Colton Hale is classified as marital or separate property will depend on how it was funded, how it was maintained, and what documentation exists. Based on what you've described, you have a very defensible position." She paused. "This is one of the clearest fact patterns I have seen in 22 years of practice." He did not react to this. "What do I need to do?" Marcus asked. "Document everything you have. Retain a forensic accountant. I have someone I trust for cases like this. Do not move assets. Do not close accounts. Do not alter anything. Conduct yourself as if your behavior over the next 6 months will be reviewed by a judge. Because it may be." She paused. "And do not tell her what you know until I advise you that the time is right." He nodded. "And Mr. Hale, do not discuss Colton Hale with anyone connected to your wife." "Understood," he said. She walked him out. He shook her hand at the door. She said, "I'll call you by end of week." He drove to the notice site after the meeting. He parked at the corner and got out and walked the property alone for an hour. The soil felt solid under his boots, the kind of feel that you can only assess by walking it, slowly, listening. The street was quiet, mid-morning on a weekday, and he could see what the block would look like in 3 years if the numbers held. He could see the building as it did not yet exist, the way he had always been able to see a structure in a space before it had been built, the lines of it, the weight, the way it would sit. He took notes in his site book. Then he called Derek and said, "We're moving on the Noda parcel. Get the offer together." "What changed?" Derek asked. "Nothing," Marcus said. "I just looked at it long enough." The 6 weeks between that call and the night Renee left were, from the outside, quiet. Marcus woke at 5:11 every morning. He filled the thermos. He drove to job sites. He reviewed bids. He walked structures looking for the thing others missed. He came home in the evenings and made dinner and washed his plate and went upstairs. Renee was home 3 or 4 evenings a week. On the others she had dinners, she said, or worked late. She seemed lighter than she had been in months. Something had loosened in her. A tension he had not consciously noticed until its absence. She laughed at her phone. She had started going to a new gym on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. She had bought new clothes. 4 or 5 pieces he had not seen, which she wore carefully and put away when she came home. He noticed all of it. He said nothing. Claudia's office filed a quiet precautionary notice with the court establishing Marcus's ownership interest in Colton Hale, a measure that created a legal timestamp predating any future marital litigation. It was a routine protective step, Claudia explained, invisible to Renee and her future attorney unless they specifically went looking for it, which they would not know to do. The forensic accountant, Patricia Osai, began her background review of Marcus's finances. She was thorough and fast. She worked from documents Marcus sent over a secure portal, tax returns, business filings, the Colton Hale formation agreement, operating history, and current valuation. She flagged 2 minor items that required additional documentation, and Marcus produced them within 48 hours. During this same period, something else happened that Marcus learned about later. Gavin Farrell, the regional VP, the man from the restaurant, sat in Renee's new car in the parking garage of her office building one afternoon and told her that he had been talking with a commercial real estate group in Charlotte about a development opportunity in the Noda corridor, a parcel near North Davidson that was being positioned for mixed-use development. He did not know, and Renee could not have told him, that the private development group quietly moving on that exact parcel was Colton Hale Development Group. That the offer coming in through Derek Colton was funded in part by the 40% stake held by the man Renee had already decided to leave. Gavin said it was a promising project. A real opportunity. Renee said, "That sounds like exactly the kind of thing Marcus would never do." She was right. It was exactly the kind of thing Marcus would never announce. Renee did not leave quietly. She did not drift out. She chose a Thursday evening in March, with Marcus standing in the kitchen and a packed duffel bag at her feet. The man at the restaurant, she told him, was named Gavin Farrell. He was a regional VP at a commercial real estate firm headquartered in Raleigh. He was, she said, someone who actually had ambition, someone who was building something, someone who understood what she needed from her life. Marcus listened to all of it without speaking. Then, Renee said the thing she had been deciding whether to say. She said it clearly and without hesitation. "Men like you don't become anything more. Marcus, you peaked at foreman. I'm not going to spend the next 20 years watching you sand floors and chase permits." He looked at her. "You're a good man," she said, and her voice shifted slightly when she said it, like she was acknowledging something she had already set aside. "But you're not enough for what I want." She picked up the duffel bag. She went to the door. "I'll have an attorney contact you," she said. She opened the door. "I think this will be simple. We don't have much." She left. Marcus stood in the kitchen for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. He picked up his coffee cup from the counter and walked it to the sink and washed it. He dried it and put it in the cabinet. Then he went upstairs to the home office, opened his laptop, and called Claudia Reeves's after-hours line. "She's gone," he said when she picked up. "All right," Claudia said. "Come in tomorrow morning. We're filing." Renee's attorney was a man named Brant Holloway, who worked out of a glass tower office in uptown Charlotte. He sent the initial discovery request on a Tuesday morning and called Claudia's office the same afternoon to request an informal meeting. He was expecting a modest asset conversation. 2 incomes, a house, 1 brokerage account, the joint checking. He had done the math on a 2,400-square-foot house in Arboretum. He had Renee's estimate of Marcus's business, the construction company, which she had roughly valued at 2 or 3 years of net revenue, and which she believed was his only enterprise. The forensic accountant Claudia retained was a woman named Patricia Osai, who had spent 12 years with the Ears and now worked independent litigation support. She spent 2 weeks reviewing Marcus's financials. She reviewed the Colton Hale formation documents, the capitalization records, the operating history, and the current valuation provided by Derek's investor group. She put together a report that ran 41 pages. Claudia called Marcus on a Wednesday afternoon. "Patricia's report came back," she said. "Colton Hale is clearly documented as a separate business interest, funded entirely from premarital capital. It's well structured, and the paper trail is clean. Brant Holloway is going to have a difficult morning when he sees this." "When do we meet?" Marcus asked. "Friday. You don't need to say anything. I'll do the talking." The meeting was on the 24th floor of a building on South Tryon Street, in a conference room with pale birch tables and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over downtown Charlotte. Claudia arrived first. Marcus arrived exactly on time, set his leather folio on the table, and helped Claudia arrange the document sets in precise stacks. Brant Holloway came in at 9:02 with a junior associate. He was polished, confident, the kind of attorney who had won most of his divorce cases in the opening offer. Renee was not present. Holloway began with the house. He walked through Renee's position on equitable distribution. The house, the accounts, a share of the construction business. Claudia let him finish. Then, she slid the first document across the table. "This is the formation agreement for Colton Hale Development Group," she said, "established 7 years ago, with capital entirely predating the marriage. And this is the most recent independent valuation." Holloway looked at the second page. He went very still. "Mr. Hale holds a 40% stake," Claudia continued. "At current valuation, that is $4, $2 million in separate property, entirely outside the marital estate." Holloway looked up from the document. He looked at Marcus. Marcus looked back at him and said, "Nothing." Additionally, Claudia continued, "As you'll see in tab 3, Colton Hale has a letter of intent pending on a NODA development parcel that, if executed, will increase that valuation significantly." The junior associate was writing something rapidly. Holloway set the document down carefully. "We were not aware of this entity," he said. "Your client had 11 years to ask," Claudia said. She was pleasant about it. She did not. The meeting took 37 minutes. At the end of it, Holloway asked for a 2-week extension to review the materials. He was quiet when he asked for it. His earlier confidence had been replaced by something measured and careful, the particular posture of a man recalibrating what a case is actually worth. Marcus stood, buttoned his jacket, and shook Claudia's hand. He did not shake Holloway's. He walked to the elevator. He rode down alone, pressed the button for the parking garage, and stood looking at the floor numbers descend. She had said, "We don't have much." He had not argued. He drove back to the Westover site. The settlement was filed 6 weeks later. Renee received the house. Marcus had offered it, because it was the one significant marital asset, and because he did not need it the way it had been. She received her share of the joint brokerage account, which came to $87,000. She received a prorated share of the marital portion of Marcus's construction company revenues, which Patricia Osai calculated at $44,200 after adjustment for premarital equity. She received no stake in Colton Hale Development Group, no interest in any pending Colton Hale transactions, and no claim on Marcus's separate property, because those were documented clean, with a paper trail that predated the marriage by 7 years and gave Holloway's firm nothing to work with. Total settlement paid by Marcus, $131,200. The Arboretum house, the one Marcus had framed himself, drywalled himself, finished the floors of on his knees, was appraised at $680,000 at the time of the settlement. It went to Renee. Brant Holloway's invoice to Renee was $38,000 in legal fees. The Nota parcel closed 31 days after the divorce was finalized. The letter of intent had held through the negotiations, through the soil report, through the title work and the financing round. At closing, Colton Hale's position was reappraised based on the finalized development projections. Marcus's 40% stake increased in value by $860,000. He did not post about it. He did not call anyone who knew Renee. He called Derek, who said, "Clean clothes," and Marcus said, "Yep," and they hung up. He called Claudia to thank her. She told him he had made the case easy. He said she had done the work. She said that was why he was paying her. He called Jalen. "You good?" Jalen asked. "Getting there," Marcus said. "She know about Colton Hale yet?" "Holloway knows. He would have told her." "How do you feel about that?" Marcus thought about it. "I don't feel much about it," he said. She made her assessment. She was wrong. That's all it is. There was a pause. "You're a cold-blooded man sometimes, Marcus." "I'm not cold," Marcus said. "I just don't perform." Jalen laughed, the kind of laugh that meant he understood exactly what was said and exactly what was underneath it. As for Gavin Farrell, the Nota development deal that his commercial real estate group had been circling, the parcel his firm had been eyeing in the same corridor where Colton Hale was building, fell through 6 weeks after the Colton Hale close. The competing group had been slower on due diligence, and the seller had ultimately accepted Colton Hale's cleaner offer. Gavin's firm had lost the opportunity, and with it, the projection that had made the deal worth pursuing. He did not tell Renee how close he had been to losing a significant commission, or that the group that had beaten him to the parcel was co-owned by the man she had recently divorced. He moved to Raleigh permanently in November. Renee did not follow him. She stayed in the Arboretum house. She paid the mortgage out of her marketing director's salary and the settlement funds. She joined a new gym. She repainted the guest bedroom a color Marcus would not have chosen. She was in the house alone most evenings. The pergola on the back deck was still there, solid as the day it was built, going nowhere. Marcus was staying in a company rental apartment in South End while he built the Dilworth house. The apartment was a one-bedroom with white walls and no furniture except what had come with it. He had his tools in the closet. He had his thermos on the kitchen counter. He went to work at 5 in the morning and came back after dark. On the weekends, he looked at properties. And then he found the lot. And then he stopped looking. He found the lot 6 months after the divorce. It was on a half-acre in Dilworth, 2 blocks from where he had seen Renee through the restaurant window the day it had started. He bought it in his personal name with cash. It was heavily wooded, which he liked. It needed a lot of clearing and grading, which he also liked. He designed the house himself over 3 weekends on graph paper at the kitchen counter of the rental apartment. He took the drawings to a structural engineer named Olu Adebayo, whom he had worked with on 4 commercial projects. Olu reviewed them, made 2 changes to the load calculations, and told Marcus it was well conceived. Marcus broke ground in October. He was on the site before sunrise on most days, either working alone or directing his crew around his own presence on the foundation work. He did everything himself that he could justify doing himself. The rough framing, the decking, the custom millwork he wanted in the study. He installed the kitchen cabinets measured twice, cut once, in 2 weekends of steady work. He hand-finished the floors with a drum sander he rented for 3 consecutive Saturdays, on his knees, moving slow. Jalen came up in November to help with the exterior work. He drove from Atlanta on a Thursday, got there at noon, looked at the structure, and said, "Marcus, man." "It's getting there," Marcus said. "It's a serious house," Jalen said. They worked together through the weekend. Jalen built a fire in the burn barrel each evening, and they ate takeout from a bag on the tailgate of the Ram, which was now at 163,000 miles and running fine. "You ever going to get a new truck?" Jalen asked. "When this one stops," Marcus said. Jalen shook his head and laughed. The house took 7 months. Marcus moved in on a warm weekend in the following May. He carried his things in himself: tools, books, clothes, the thermos, the Cuisinart, a cedar Adirondack chair he had built in the study of the rental apartment the previous winter, piece by piece, out of plans he had drawn himself. He put the chair on the back porch. He poured coffee that had gone slightly cold and sat in it and looked at the yard. He did not think about Renee. He thought about the book he was planning to order. He thought about whether the pergola should run east-west or north-south to catch the afternoon shade. He thought about the fence he needed to build along the property line. He went inside. He unpacked his books. He put them on the shelves in the study, which had dark oak panels he had milled and installed himself. He had built the shelves to run floor to ceiling along 3 walls, with a rolling ladder that ran on a brass rail he had ordered from a supplier in Asheville. He made dinner. He ate at the kitchen island. He went to bed. It was Jalen who told him about the event. Colton Hale had been nominated for a Real Estate Development Award from the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, recognizing commercial projects that contributed meaningfully to neighborhood development. The NODA project was the nominated work. The ceremony was a formal dinner at the Marriott City Center. "Derek says you have to be there," Jalen said on the phone. "He says this is not optional." "I'll be there," Marcus said. He wore a suit he had bought for the occasion, dark navy, well-fitted, chosen with a precision he had not previously applied to clothing. He arrived at the event alone, early, and stood at the pre-dinner reception with a glass of water, talking to a developer from Raleigh about material cost trends. At 7:15, Derek appeared at his elbow and said, "Quietly, Marcus, you need to look right." Marcus looked right. Renee was 20 feet away. She was standing with a group near the bar, older than he remembered, somehow, or perhaps just differently arranged, the ease gone from her posture. She was in a black dress and holding a glass of wine, and she was with a man, but the man was not Gavin Farrell. He was taller, older, wearing a watch that Marcus recognized as expensive. She was laughing at something the man said, the way she used to laugh at things, and Marcus noticed the effort in it. He looked for another moment. Then, he looked back at Derek. "The man presenting the award is Hollis Whitman," Derek said. "He runs a major development group out of Atlanta, wants to discuss a joint venture. I told him you were the better person to speak to." "All right," Marcus said. He spent the next 20 minutes talking to Hollis Whitman, who was compact and direct and asked precise questions about land acquisition timelines and community approval processes. Marcus answered all of them, precisely, without hedging. They were talking when the woman appeared beside Whitman. She was tall, dark hair, high cheekbones, a particular easiness in the way she stood that Marcus registered before he noticed anything else. Hollis introduced her as his daughter Serena. "My dad dragged me," she said, and looked at Marcus. "Are you two talking about something interesting or something boring?" "Depends on whether you find land acquisition interesting," Marcus said. "I run logistics for a fashion company," she said. "I find land acquisition moderately boring." She tilted her head slightly. "But I'm easy to convince." Marcus smiled. She smiled back. They talked through the dinner, and not about land. She had grown up in Atlanta and moved to New York for 6 years and come back. She was direct and easy to be around, and she asked questions and waited for the full answers. When the award was announced, Colton Hale Development Group, for the NODA mixed-use project, she clapped and said to Marcus, "That's you?" "That's us," he said, and nodded toward Derek. "Modest," she said. "Accurate," he said. She laughed, and it reached her eyes. They exchanged numbers before the event ended. He walked her to her car and they stood outside the Marriott for a few minutes in the May evening. She said she would be in Charlotte for 3 more days. He said they should have dinner, if she wanted. She said she definitely wanted. He drove home. He did not know that, on the other side of the room during the award announcement, Renee had stood with her glass of wine and watched him cross the stage to receive the award alongside Derek, and had gone very quiet. He did not know that she had turned to the man beside her, not Gavin, someone new, someone she was still figuring out, and said something he couldn't hear. He did not know that she had left the event shortly after, and that she had been mostly silent in the car on the way home. He did not know, and it did not matter. He parked in the driveway of the house he had built. He sat for a moment with the engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal. Then he got out. He went inside. He left his jacket on the hook by the door and walked through the kitchen, the cabinets he had hung himself, the countertops he had measured twice, and out to the back porch. He sat in the cedar chair. The yard was quiet. Somewhere down the block a dog barked once and stopped. The night air smelled like the start of summer. He finished his coffee. He thought about the things he had to do this week. The Westover punch list, a call with Hollis Whitman's team, the fence along the property line that still needed to go in. He went inside. He turned off the lights. He went to bed. He did not look back. There was nothing behind him worth looking at. 3 months later, Marcus and Serena Whitman were photographed at the reopening gala for the NODA mixed-use building, the project that Colton Hale had developed and that had reshaped a block of North Davidson the way Marcus had seen it would. The afternoon he had walked the property in his boots and decided the soil was solid. Serena had come back to Charlotte to see the finished building. She was wearing a white dress. She worked as the head of supply chain operations for an international fashion label whose parent company had done campaign work with Victoria's Secret in the previous year, and the company's name was in her bio in the Charlotte Business Journal profile that ran 2 weeks after the event, under a photo of her and Marcus at the gala. The profile was not long. It named the development project, Derek's company, and Marcus's role in it. It named the NODA neighborhood, the community approval process, and the construction timeline. It was a business story. Renee saw it on a Thursday morning. She was at her kitchen island with her coffee, the house in Arboretum which she had kept, which still had Marcus's pergola on the back deck and the hardwood floors he had hand-sanded on his knees, and she was scrolling her phone. And there he was. She read the photo caption twice. She looked at the photo for a long time. Marcus in a dark suit, the one she had never seen on him, standing easy and specific the way he always stood, with a woman who was striking and clearly at ease beside him. and behind them the building, lit and finished and very good. She set her phone face down on the counter. She thought about what she had said that March evening with the duffel bag at her feet. She thought about the words she had used. She heard her own voice saying it, clearly, the way you hear things that you cannot unsay. She looked out the window. The pergola was there. She had never thought about how he had built it until right now, the specific way the cedar was jointed, the way it didn't wobble in the wind, the way it had been there since the summer before she left, not asking for anything, just holding. She picked up her phone. She set it back down. She was alone in the house. In the living room, the antique clock on the mantel counted out the minutes in the morning quiet. She listened to it for a little while. Then she got up, took her coffee to the sink, rinsed the cup, and left for work. The Dilworth house was finished now in the way good things are finished, not complete, but settled. Inhabited, Marcus had added shelves to the study. He had run a second fence line along the back of the property and was planning a small outbuilding for equipment storage. The yard had been graded and seeded in the spring, and it was coming in thick. He was on the back porch on a Saturday morning with his coffee and his notebook when his phone rang. It was Jalen. "You see the journal piece?" Jalen said. "Derek sent it," Marcus said. "You look good in a suit," Jalen said. "Who is she?" "You'll meet her," Marcus said. When I get around to it." Jalen laughed. Marcus set the phone down and looked out at the yard. The coffee was starting to go cold. He drank what was left of it. Somewhere in the neighborhood a lawnmower started up, then settled into a steady sound. He opened his notebook. He had a site walk at Westover at noon. The punch list was almost done. 2 or 3 remaining items. After that, a call with Hollis Whitman's team about a parcel in Gastonia that the Whitman Group was looking at. After that, dinner with Serena, who was in town through Tuesday. He wrote down the items in order. He capped the pen. He got up, went inside, and got his thermos and his Carhartt jacket. He picked up his site notebook from the counter and tucked it in the inside pocket. He went out through the side door to the driveway. The Ram was cold. He let it run for a minute before pulling out. He drove toward the job site. The morning was clear and getting warmer. He did not check his phone at the lights. He kept both hands on the wheel and his eyes on the road, and then on the site, and then on the work, which was where his eyes had always been. He had never hid who he was. She had simply decided that wasn't enough before she ever thought to ask what else there might be. He had not argued. He had not explained. He had not announced. He had simply kept going, piece by piece, with his hands, with patience, the same way he had always done everything that lasted. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.